So today's going to be a little bit different from some of the other days that we've been doing. Firstly, I'm not going to be using my terminal. There's no command line work that we're going to be doing today. Everything's going to be from the web browser. We're going to be working on GitHub directly for all of the activities that we're doing today. So that should make it an easy entry point for everybody. I just want to make sure, everybody's been chatting in the chat to say good afternoon, which is good. It means everybody can hear me and that we've all connected so far. I'm just curious, whereabouts are people joining from? Either a state or a university or wherever it is that you happen to be at. UWA, okay, cool. So you're on Perth time and Covey is in Melbourne. Okay, all right. So you're at the later time. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right. So as usual, let me share my screen. Desktop capture. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here we go. I think I'll have to hide the meeting chat. All right, so feel free to ask questions at any time. If you want to interrupt me, if you want to put something in the chat, I think I get a notification for that. Otherwise, I think the reactions, thumbs up and things like that, give me a notification as well. So I'm always happy to make this interactive and for people to ask questions. If there are pieces that are maybe already known to everybody, I'm happy to move quickly through those and of course to revisit things that were not very clear. And then there's also all of the tangents that we might get onto as well. So this is part of the reproducible science for early mid-career researchers. Today we're going to be working on episode 4, which is leveraging GitHub for research. So I'm going to, I think I might zoom the page a little bit. I just don't like the extra white space on the edges, and larger text is always better for everybody, I think. So there's a few things that we're going to do today. Really what we're going to be doing is walking through creating a GitHub repository, and then rather than exploring all of the wonders of what version control can do for you, we're going to look at all of the other things kind of outside of version control that GitHub offers you and how they can be useful for your research projects. So I have here a lot of the elements that I think are critical in a research project life cycle. And I'm just going to pretend that we do our projects as a one shot, start to finish, everything goes as planned. We all know that that's not true. But nonetheless, the items that are in that crazy wandering path that takes us from having an idea to publishing a paper or whatever the other sort of outputs we might have. Even though that might be a wandering path, these are still a lot of the steps that are involved. So some of these, it will be very obvious how we can do them using GitHub. Some of them are a little bit less obvious. But really what I want to show is that there is lots of opportunities here. So the first few options here, developing a hypothesis, reviewing literature and sourcing data. These are things that I guess also developing methodologies. These are more like planning tasks. These are things that are helping you to sort in your mind, what is the current state of play in terms of what do people understand, what data is available to me, what software and other tools are available to me, and how might I engage in a research project that is going to be I guess, contributing to the greater understanding. So in a lot of these cases here, what you're wanting to be able to do is communicate with people, and have a place where you can store some of your ideas, some of your references, citations, things like that, that you would like to work with. Um, Cleaning and processing data, analyzing data, and preparing posters and presentations. These are things that often will involve writing code, or at least writing notes on what it is that you have done. So having version control repositories such as Git in GitHub allows you to do all of these three things. But it also allows you to collaborate with other people and share your work along the way. I guess I should have included documenting the project workflow in that. Storing and archiving data code documentation when you have finished a project is particularly important. I'll admit to a few cases of having produced some significant research outputs. For example, my PhD thesis. If you were to ask me today to be able to reproduce that, it would probably take me quite a long time. Maybe not the 3 years that it took initially, but quite a lot of time to reproduce. I think the original data, I don't know where it is. The code that I wrote was before I had learned about the essential nature of version control and even storing things in repositories. So GitHub can help you with all of that. And this archiving is not necessarily a set and forget. The archiving is usually a, we want to keep the code, the data, and things like that around in case, a couple of years in the future, you have some new ideas. Maybe you have some different data. Maybe you want to process the data in a different way. The last few items here, so being acknowledged and giving acknowledgements. Usually that's about having other people having visibility of the work that you've done, and also communicating to other people how you want to be acknowledged for the work that you have done. So a lot of the times that just means citing a paper. But there's quite a few software packages that I've used, at least, where I want to make a reference to that piece of software, and the authors of the software haven't really indicated to me what is the most useful to them way of giving credit. So some people will want maybe a link to a GitHub repository. Other people might want you to cite a particular paper. Maybe they want you to put a certain piece of text in the acknowledgements. But if they don't tell me in an easy way what it is that they want, I'm probably not going to do the thing that's best for them. So GitHub is a great sort of public way of being able to do that. And then the last two here, project management and collaborative working. Every project needs to be managed, and I would say that nearly every project that we work on is going to be collaborative in some way, whether you've got multiple people contributing or whether it's just a case of you need to share some of your work with other people as part of the review process, or the peer review process. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about automation because that's a previous workshop. Reusing previous work is a previous workshop, and the sort of high level, I don't want to call it optimization, but how to work efficiently is also a previous topic. So this week we're going to focus on how to use GitHub throughout the life cycle of our project. Before I start, I just wanted to mention that if you have an email address, which is something or other, at a university.edu.au, then this is, you're eligible to get a GitHub education. I'm not really going to call it a discount, but essentially they give you a free pro features. And the ones that are useful, maybe you want to have lots of private repositories. I think the free version of GitHub only lets you have a couple of those. You also get access to GitHub Copilot Pro and GitHub Code Spaces. So the Copilot Pro is like a LLM that integrates into your VS Code and other editors, and it allows you to essentially chat to Copilot and ask for help and advice, or to check something, or to write a piece of code for you. And that's quite a handy feature. With all the normal caveats of not trusting AI, but at least for a lot of the boilerplate code that you might be writing, Copilot can be very useful there. So, all right. The GitHub education is not something that's required for this workshop. I'm just going to mention it so that you can get potentially some benefit from that through your university employment/enrollment. What we're going to focus on today are the features of GitHub that are useful for research projects and scientific collaboration. As I've already said, I'm not going to talk about really how Git works. There's a good carpentries lesson which will give you all of the intro to Git. The only thing that we will need to have for today is a GitHub account. So let me just double check that everybody has a GitHub account that they're able to use for today. Great. Alex has one. Okay, great. Good. If people don't have one, it's not a big issue because it takes literally 5 minutes to sign up for one. So, all right. So here are some of the things that we're going to be looking at to start with. So GitHub has repositories. So the repository is sort of the central location for storing and managing all of the files related to your research project. Within a repository, you have all of the files that are stored by Git, but then GitHub sort of adds onto that a bunch of additional features that are not necessarily part of the Git repository, but they are part of the GitHub repository. So one of the things that GitHub adds is this idea of issues, which is a place that you can track bugs, you can have conversations with people about new or existing features, you can answer questions, you can have team discussions about plans that you're making for the particular repository. There is also a feature called pull requests, which allows you to, firstly, if you've developed new code or new documents in a separate repository or even a separate branch of the same repository, a pull request is a nice way of formalizing how you merge those changes into maybe into your main branch of your repository. And this is focused on being sort of a review process where you have a collaborative opportunity to look at what was the purpose of the changes, has that purpose been fulfilled, what changes were actually required, how are those changes going to affect the usability or the utility of this repository going forwards. And this is meant to be it's not so much like a grading opportunity where you get like a pass fail and you should feel bad about failing. This is more of a collaborative opportunity to make sure that all of the changes are as good as they could be before they get merged into the other branch or the other repository. There is also a wiki that is attached to each GitHub repository. The wikis are technically their own GitHub repository, but their own Git repo, but GitHub sort of squishes them together a little bit. So the wiki is a great place for having documentation or maybe instructions to people. Potentially you want to tell a story about how the research came about, and you want to give maybe a more, let's say, publicly accessible outreach type narrative of your research project. So anyway, these are some of the things that we're going to explore firstly today. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? So far, so good. Okay. All right. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new repository. So I'm suggesting that we call this repository bird count. That will keep with the theme of everything that we're working on today. So what we're going to do is go to github.com and log into your account. And whichever landing page you end up on, you might have a personal page like this that you're taken to. But maybe you'll just go to something that looks like this, which shows all of the repositories that you're working on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What we're looking for is this little plus button in the top right here. And we're going to select new repository. And we'll get something that looks like this. We don't need to use a template for our repository. We just need to make sure that the owner is ourselves. There's lots of different places that I've contributed to, but just we're making this part of our personal GitHub, and we're going to call this bird count. No, with a C, count. There we go. So unless you've done this before, then it will say bird count is available. These repository names only need to be unique within your personal namespace, not globally. I think, and then add a description is optional. Collaborative project to survey bird populations. Let me just copy that because I'm a little bit lazy. We're going to make this public. And I think I said choose to make it public or private. Yes. Initialize the project with a README file. So if I click this little tick here, GitHub is going to set up a README file. The README file will just be the name of the repository. That's all that's going to be in it. And it says here down the bottom that it will set main as the default branch. We can leave the other things, leave the git ignore, leave the license, leave that all empty for now. And then we're going to click create repository. So down here, it'll take a little bit of thinking, and here we go. So we've got ourselves a new repository, and this is what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be adding some files, modifying the files a little bit, but mostly we're going to be doing that in aid of exploring how issues and pull requests and the wiki works. So across the top of your repository, you should have a tab that says code, one that says issues, which is empty, one that says pull requests, which is empty, and one that says wiki, which at the moment is also empty. If any of those things are missing, you can go to the settings, and there is here the features. So you can turn on and off wikis, issues, projects, things like that. So if you're missing the wikis or you're missing issues, you can just come into the settings page and click to turn those on. Okay. I don't remember whether that has to happen on a per repository basis or whether I've set a global setting somewhere, but nonetheless, we can have access to all of those three things. That's what we're going to be working with today. All right, so what did I have in my demonstration? It looks like ticking all of these boxes and then pressing this button here. Cool. Okay, so we're not going to be writing any code today. We're going to be writing a few files. What we're often going to be doing is either making a file that has a .md file type, which is Markdown, or we're going to just be writing Markdown directly into the wiki pages. So Markdown is a formatting style, formatting syntax, I guess. When we're looking at files in GitHub, there'll be a preview. So the preview is where things have been rendered. And if I press code, this will just show me the raw file. And you can see that the file itself just has a hash, a space, and then a name, which is giving me a heading with an underline. And then directly below that, I've got just a short bit of text, and it gets rendered like this. So when we write things in our README file, GitHub will render the README file down here. So the README is a really great place to sort of provide, let's say, like a splash screen for your project. All right, so everybody's got that done, I hope. Stop me if there are any problems. And what we're going to do is talk about issues and how we can use the issue tracker to help with our projects. So the life cycle of an individual issue is that you or some collaborator will identify a question, a feature, a bug, a piece of work that needs to happen, and they will create an issue related to that. Now, the name is issue, which means it sounds like there's some kind of problem all of the time. But this is not just about trying to fix bugs. You can use the issue tracker as a bit of a project management tool where you define tasks that need to happen. You can assign those tasks to people. You can have discussions about what needs to happen. People can share text, they can share images and things as part of that discussion. And when you've sort of finished that discussion, you can mark the issue as being closed, but it doesn't need to be deleted. The issue will, all of the documentation around that issue will remain on GitHub. So the typical life cycle is you identify something that needs to happen, you create an issue to describe that, you use the issue tracker to discuss whatever that action needs to be. You then make changes to the repository to address the issue. So maybe answering a question, changing a file. I've seen people use a GitHub repo to track managing a conference, and they don't necessarily change a whole heap of files. Maybe some of the files that changes are things like the schedule, but they'll have things like organized catering as an issue, and people can just track that and say, I've contacted these, I've got quotes for these people, how many vegetarian, vegan, or other meal choices do we need to include? And all of these discussions can happen as part of the GitHub issue tracker, even though let's say for the catering, maybe, you don't actually need to make any changes to the files within the repository, but you can still track actions that need to happen. And the nice thing about that is that anybody that you invite to that repository is able to see that those issue trackers. Okay, so let's create an issue for our bird count repository. So our repository at the moment just has one file in it, and we need to do some things to make this repository, let's say, initialized or ready for work, ready to actually start to do something about our project. So we're going to make a new issue, and the new issue is going to be about, what did I say? We're going to do something which is project setup. So let's do project setup, documentation. Did I say documentation, license, and wiki? And I can't spell, so I'm just going to autocorrect this. Okay. The following items need to be completed for us to have an initial repository. And the items are, what did I say the first one is? Update the README with project details. README with project details. Choose a license for the project and add a first page to the wiki. I think they are the things that I was saying. create a front page for the project wiki. Okay, so the markdown formatting here, these dashes will be dot points. These open square brackets with nothing in between them, they get rendered. In fact, these together, dash, space, open bracket, space, close bracket, all together, if I press preview, they give me these little check boxes that I can tick and untick as those activities are completed. And the back ticks here, this character, the back tick around a word gives you this sort of, what would you call that? It's like a quote rendering, monospace text rendering, which is usually what I use to refer to files within the repository. It's not a link to the file, but it just makes it clear that I'm talking about a file in that case. All right, so I got a title and a description. I could also use these buttons up here to give me a task list or just a numbered list or an unordered list, that sort of thing. But I work with Markdown enough that it's easier for me to type them directly. Now, when we have an issue, I can just throw this issue out into the void and see who bites. But it would be nice if I assign somebody to actually do the work. Now, because we don't have any collaborators on our wikis at the moment, or on our repos at the moment, we're going to assign ourselves to do the work. So we just click the button that says assign myself. So assign the issue to yourself. Oh, and we're also going to add a label. So GitHub creates a whole bunch of labels, which are fairly common. And we're going to choose documentation because that's part of what we need to do. Help question. Yeah, we'll just choose a label. So we created an issue, assign to ourselves, add the documentation label, and press create. And we can see now that we have an issue that's created. It's given us a link here, an identifier, which is number one, issue number one. You can see that I can actually click on these little checkboxes to mark them complete or not complete. We can write comments down here. So as I go through the completion, as I update the README, I might make a comment to say, I've done this. Maybe I'll link to the commit that updated the wiki, updated the README. There's a whole heap of other things on the side here, which we're going to get to a little bit later. We'll be talking about milestones in a little bit. All right, so we've got ourselves an issue. Now, what does it say? I did all of the things. Yeah, that's fine. When we create an issue, it will be auto-assigned a number. So we get number one. And this identifier is unique within your repository. So anywhere in your repository where you would like to refer to this issue, I can just write #1. And when I look in the preview here, you can see that this is now rendered as a link to this issue, and it gets this nice little hover over that reminds me of what the issue is, okay? And I can do that within this issue. I can do that within a pull request. I can do it within other issues if they start to get related to each other or overlap with each other. I can put all of those, I can use these magic sort of hash links. Be careful that the hash doesn't have a space after it. So #1 is referring to issue 1. #1 is the markdown for a large heading whose text is just the number 1. Cool. All right, so the other things that we can see here, but we haven't clicked yet, are the project milestones. So over here, milestones, if I click on this, it says that there's nothing here yet. We're going to set some milestones later, but essentially milestones and issues, and even here where we've got sub-issues, we can sort of have a hierarchy of work that needs to be done. So we might have a milestone, which is do the initialization of the project. And one of the issues is the documentation license in wiki. And there might be another issue, which is, decide and document what the file structure is going to be, decide who the collaborators are, all of those things. They might be different parts of that same milestone, but they can be different issues. And then similarly, I can have sub issues. So each of these little checkboxes here, I could actually turn them into, convert to a sub issue if I want to. It just depends on the granularity about how you want to manage things within your project. If you like to see things where you have the sub issues are completed, which then auto completes the parent issue, which then, when they're all done, auto completes the milestone. If you like to see that happening, then you can definitely organize things in that way. All right, we're going to explore those later on though. So what we're going to do is we have an issue and we're going to work on doing something about it. We're going to solve that issue. And we're going to work on the feature branching workflow, which is one of the sort of strongly recommended ways that you can work with Git. I'm just looking for a diagram, actually. I don't really want all of this text. So the feature branching workflow is essentially this, where you have your main branch, you create a new branch to address some feature, you work on that feature until it's complete, and then you merge it back into the main branch. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So we'll go to our bird count repository and then click on the issues. Oh, that's where I already was. Okay, so click on issues, click on the issue that we just created. And then GitHub gives us a little development section down here. I'm skipping this Copilot thing, but there's a link here that says create a branch for this issue or link a pull request. So I'm going to click this create a branch, and it has a very long name at the moment. Name the branch something descriptive such as one-setup-repo. Yeah, that's a bit better. So maybe I'll just change this. Okay. I like to have shorter names for the branches, but I find it useful to keep the leading number here so that this number refers to the issue that we're tracking. That's quite useful for just being able to track things. So the destination is part of our bird count repo, and the branch source is going to be main. We only have one branch at the moment. It doesn't matter which of these two things you check here because we're not going to be doing either of them. So I'll just leave the checkout locally selected and then click create branch. So behind the scene, GitHub has just said git branch one-setup repo. It's made the new branch and it's checked it out. I'm going to just close this little window because we're not going to work locally. So we have a branch now over here, which is associated with this issue. So if I click on that, it's opened a new tab. Okay. So if I click on that, it brings me here back to my front page, except in the top left, it now says setup repo. And if I click on that, I can see the different branches that have been created. So as long as we're on this setup repo, we're okay. This little counter here tells us that we now have 2 branches. So what did I say? Create the branch, do the thing, confirm the branch. Once created, switch to the new branch. Okay, so creating the main branch is just like this. And we can click create branch. And changing branches, we just go to our main and then we just select one setup repo. So now what we can do is we can make all of the changes that are required for the first issue. We can make it within this repository, within this branch here. So the 2 things that we said we were going to do, one of them was to update the README file. So working directly in the browser, I can just click on the README file. I didn't mean to open in a new tab. I just wanted to do this. Okay, so I can open my readme.md file. On the right-hand side here, there's a little pencil which just says edit this file. And because it's a text markdown file, I can just edit this directly in the browser. So what does it say? Add the following information. We want all of these things here. All right, so I'm going to copy this just so I remember what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. So project description. We kind of have that collaborative project to survey local bird. So let's give this header number 2. Description and purpose. We also want to have software and tools. We will likely be using Python and pandas to manage all our plots. Okay. Project lead. Let's just put myself here. So I'll write. And so this is a bit of markdown formatting. Square brackets followed by round brackets means here's some text in the square brackets, and here's the link, mail to, and then paul.hancock@curtin.edu.au. Let's make it a little, no, that's fine. Getting involved. Let's call that contributing. Contact me above or fork this repo. So people can make a copy of this repo. And I've made some changes. It's probably a good way. And then fun touch. So let's just do a fun fact on a number 3. All right. Fun fact. Fun fact about birds. And we can add some emojis as well. So we can, GitHub recognizes a whole bunch of different emojis. If we just start with a colon, I think there's a rooster. No, there's a chicken. Oh, there's lots of baby chickens and chicks and things like that. Birds are dinosaurs. Let's just write that. All right, so we've got a not amazing, but nonetheless, you can sort of see how we would use this README file. So ideally, I'd have description and purpose. This would be about the project itself. Why do we actually even want to bother counting the populations? I might link to some research about declining wildlife populations in urban areas and the need to be able to track this decline. I might link to some other efforts around like the, I can't remember what it's called now, something like there's a National Bird Count Day or something like that. And the fact that I want to do this on a longer term basis. Software and tools, you can think about this in terms of like a requirements for a software package, or this might just help people, engage in the project a bit better. So it helps if everybody's using the same tools. As more people get joined to the project, I might change this from project lead to project team, these sorts of things. So this is our way of sort of introducing let's say not necessarily the general public, but introducing potential collaborators to the project. So, all right, so this is the raw version, the preview version, and I'm going to press commit changes now. And so I get this little thing with the commit message, all this sort of stuff. So long as we keep this commit directly to the one setup repo branch, we'll be okay. I'm not going to bother changing these commit messages. Just going to say commit. And that's done. So now you can see up here, instead of saying commit, it tells me there's the edit that I made. So 6BEF, yours will be different. And now that I've changed this, commit your changes to the current branch. Okay. So once you've updated the README file, we can go back to our issue tracker and we can say we've completed this issue. So I can tick the box, but I can also say README updated as of 6BF. I forgot what it all was. Oh, I'll just write here, README updated, and I'll comment. And you can see here it says just now, but eventually that'll give a date and a time that the comment was made. All right, so we've got some of the issue completed. I think, what did I say in here? I was a bit more detailed. Superb lyrebird. Yep. Okay. All right. How's everybody going? Am I moving too slowly or too quickly? Or are people happy with the current pace? Okay. Awesome. I shall continue. All right. So we're going to do another thing. We're going to so update the issue. I just did that one. Yes, so updating the issue is coming in here, checking this, writing a little comment in here. You can see that there are things that happen to this issue and GitHub will track them as well. So it says, I assigned this to myself, I added the documentation. Maybe after we have a discussion, we're going to add another label that also would get tracked in here as well. So now we're going to add a license to our repository. So let's go back to the code section and we're going to make sure that we're still on the setup repo branch and we're going to add a new file. So there's a button here that says add file and we're just going to create a new one. And then this gives me the opportunity to type in the path and the file name that we want to edit. And I'm just going to write license in here, .md. Okay. Hang on, I've got to spell it properly. There we go. If I write license properly, you see how this extra button comes up? So this button here that says choose a license template, rather than me writing all the details in here, I'm just going to click on this button, choose template. Do you want to? Yeah, that's fine. So this will take me to a new page where there's a bunch of sort of built-in licenses that people commonly use. And so GitHub gives you a bit of a preview of what they are. So if we choose, for example, the MIT license, tells you permissions, limitations, conditions, and then it shows you this is essentially the license itself. I'm just going to choose MIT because it's nice and short. For this repo, it probably actually doesn't matter at all. Likely by the end of the week, I might delete this repository. But for a lot of your projects, it is useful to put a license on the project. Not so much that you're going to go and take legal action against people, more about just letting people know how they can use and reuse the work that you have done and what conditions there are. And yeah, it sounds funny, but there's actually a few universities that I know of that have pretty strict limitations on their researchers that say that they're only allowed to use software that has a particular license or category of licenses assigned to them. And if you've written software that doesn't have any license whatsoever, there are places where, strictly speaking, people shouldn't be using that software. Now, there's only really one university that I know of that has very strictly enforced policies. But nonetheless, adding a license will, in a little way, make your project more accessible to other people. maybe you do something really awesome and some company wants to come and use your software. If you've licensed it appropriately, then they can't come back and complain that your software broke for their use case that you weren't even considering. So anyway, I won't talk about licenses too much. I'm just going to choose MIT license. You choose whatever you want to. Type in a year and your name on the right. Should all be auto-filled. And then I press review and submit. And then what happens is GitHub will create for me a file called license, all in caps. And then it adds the particular license that I've chosen. It adds the body of that license to the file. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to just directly commit these changes. And again, create license, make sure we're on the right branch, commit changes. All right, so now in my code section, I've got two files. I've got a license and I've got a readme.md file. And that has completed the second part of our issue. So I'm going to come back here into the issues and I'm going to check this box. And I have going to put in here, decided to go with an MIT license. Comment. Okay. All right. So we've done two of the three things. Add the license to the thing. Yes. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a wiki page for our repository. So the wiki page doesn't involve creating any files in here. It just involves clicking on the wiki tab. And then here it says create the first page. And we get a dialog that looks familiar from before. And it's suggested some content. Everything in here is in Markdown format. In fact, I can even choose here whether I want to do restructured text or a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't even know how most of these work. So I'm just going to stick with Markdown as my formatting. And what does it say? Create the first page, name your page something like project motivation. I'm going to leave the name of the page as home because it's a pretty good home page. In the content area, write a short paragraph explaining why the project exists and what inspired it. Add bullet points, blah, 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 to make it more engaging. Okay, what did I write in here? All right, so I wrote some things before. So I'm going to copy this actually. And I just realized now I made some mistakes. I don't want these stupid dashes. So let me put that content in here. Delete these angle brackets. I don't know where they came from. So let's see. Project motivation is the heading. Bird count project was created better to understand the diversity of abundance bird species in local area. Okay, why bird count? Birds are important. Community-driven data collection includes coverage engagement. And open data supports research, education, and conservation. And there's some bird emojis, and I can put some more chicken or a parrot and maybe a penguin. Not like you're going to see any penguins near me, but nonetheless. So this is what my wiki is going to look like to start with. I can link to other wiki pages if I had created them. And you'll get some assistance here by clicking on these buttons. So this is saying, I want to make a link. This one is saying, I want to add an image so that you need the image URL. If you want to, you can also, I think you can drop an image or a file into this window. It will upload it to somewhere on GitHub and then provide you with the link to it. So you can do all of that just with like a drag and drop type interface. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like this. But you can imagine this would be a nice place. I see the wiki and the README as having two different audiences. So the README, let's have a look on the setup repo. So the README is for people who are potentially going to contribute to the work, people who want to maybe reproduce the work that you've done, maybe people who want to join your collaboration. The wiki is your sort of outreach promotional work. So this would be, maybe something that would evolve into the introduction to your paper as the motivation here. You can link to all of the other maybe similar projects that are happening. You could talk about, if you want to contact us for follow-up information. So maybe like if the media get a hold of this, or maybe if somebody is wanting to use some of your work in schools for making lessons, you can put all of that sort of information into the wiki. Another thing that I find wiki is really useful for is if your GitHub repository is providing software to people, you can kind of have a help page for here's like a tutorial to get started. Here are some frequently asked questions. Here's some troubleshooting tips and tricks for using this software. So I look at the code section, the readme.md, as the audience being co-contributors and the wiki as being people who are using or consuming the content. Okay, so, all right, I talked a lot about the wiki. The wiki's done, at least the first page, so I can come back to my issues. I can click this little box here and I can say wiki has been updated. Now, comment. So this issue is now finished. I'm happy with this. All of the changes are in this branch except for the wiki. The wiki is not in the branch necessarily. It's lives somewhere else. So what we want to do is we want to resolve this issue. I could actually just press the button close issue, which says that it's completed. But because the work was done in a branch, what we want to do is we want to merge that branch. So GitHub will show you this little pop-up here to say, oh, this branch has had recent changes 6 minutes ago. So I can press this compare and pull request button, or I could press this tab over here and say, let's make a new pull request. And it will ask me which branches I want to merge. So make sure the one on the left is the main branch. That's where all the changes are going to end up. And the one on the right should be setup repo. That's where the changes are going to come from. So you can say here base to compare. And it shows me that there were 2 changed files with 37 additions and 0 deletions. So essentially I just added 30 extra lines. So 21 lines here in the license file and 18 lines were added to the README file. That's what will happen. So at the moment, I'm just comparing those changes. If I press the green button here, then I'll make a pull request. So the pull request looks a lot like the issue tracker, essentially because pull requests are a special type of issue. So what I'll write down here is, sorry, let me just make sure I'm solving the issue, do the thing. Let's give it a better title. So by default, the name of the pull request is just the name of the branch. So I'm going to change the title of the pull request to be something that's more useful. And in the description, summarize the changes. Okay, the changes that I made were updated the README, and I'll put little ticks around those. And I'll make this a list because I did a few things. Chose a license. Created the first page of the wiki and then I'll write in brackets, not part of this. Yeah, okay. So the wiki is just the thing that I did. Actually, you know what? There's no point in writing that. Let's just delete that bit. Okay. Chose the license, updated the README. Before I create actually I can create the pull request now. And then I can add some of these things on the right-hand side here. So I can add myself as an assignee. So that's the person who's going to do whatever work is required to make this pull request okay. And then I want to assign a reviewer. Now, because I don't have any collaborators at the moment, I can't assign any reviewers. You can't have somebody reviewing and being the assignee at the same time. GitHub doesn't allow you to do that. Because I have the GitHub Pro from the academic, or not the academic, what do I call it, educational license, I'm going to request that GitHub Copilot do a review for me. Now, from experience, this is going to be a really boring review. It's not going to say anything super useful, but nonetheless, I'm going to have a reviewer. On the pull request page, we've also got labels. I can add the same labels that I would if this was an issue. It says here, development successfully merging this pull request may close these issues. And you can see here, it says I have a linked issue as of 1 minute ago. So this here, because I created this branch, because I've created a branch that was associated with this particular issue, and this pull request is merging that branch, GitHub understands that when I complete this pull request, that means that that particular issue will also be closed. Okay, so it's just telling me this here. And I've got 3 tasks that are all ticked off. So here we go. GitHub Copilot made an amazing review for me. It says that I updated the README and I added a license. What else does it say? The contact me above instructions is vague. Consider specifying the contact method explicitly. So it gave me a little bit of feedback, and you know what? I'm happy with the way it is. Contact me above. I think people understand that it means using the email address. So whether it's Copilot or whether it's other people in your collaboration, you'll get some reviews here. You might need to make some changes to satisfy them. If you have any GitHub actions defined, which maybe run tests. So if you're writing code, you can have tests run automatically. They will pop up here as well and say whether the test passed or failed. I want to talk about the other tabs that we have here. So the first one is commits. This just shows you the different commits that are associated with this pull request. I don't find this very useful that often. The checks here at the moment are empty, but this is where things like if you had a test environment or test code that was running, you would see in here those tests being run. The thing that I find quite useful, especially as the reviewer, is the one that says files changed. So you can go in here and you can say license. I can look at that file. I can see what's changed. The left is the old file. The right is the new file. If I wanted to make a comment, I can click on these little plus here and I can say Copilot wants me to change this, but I think it is obvious that I mean for people to email me. And when I, let's say, add a single comment. All right, so I've made an inline comment here about that particular line. If I'm reviewing changes, I could create a review here. I can either approve the changes, or I can request that more be made. The reason I don't have this little, I can't click these is because I can't approve my own work. That's not seen as good work, good practice, I should say. So let's have a look. Oh yeah, and I can click that I viewed the files. So good for me. I viewed the files. I come back to the conversation here and you'll see that I've now got the comment that I made before in the context of the code. So I can see that in the README file on this line, I have commented that this is what's going to happen. And I can reply to that. We can have a discussion. If I make changes that would modify that line, then this comment gets marked as obsolete. Or if I want to just directly, I can just say, let's just resolve this conversation and say that there's nothing that needs to happen. So it's now resolved. All right, so I think that's most of what I wanted to say. Does anybody have questions about these pull requests before we move on? Oop. All right. All right, so once we're happy with things, we press the button. So we press merge pull request. There's a few options. My advice is don't click any of those, just press merge pull request. And it gives me a commit message, and I'm just going to leave all of this as is. Confirm merge. And now all of the changes that are in the setup repo branch are now also committed to the main branch. You can see here it says merged, and I get an option that says the pull request select successfully merged and closed. You can now delete that branch if you want to. Now, I'm not going to do any more work that contributes to this same issue because the issue is completed. So I'm actually just going to delete this branch. I don't like having lots of branches hanging around. I like to create a branch, do some work, merge it into wherever it came from, and then delete that branch. All right, so what we'll see up the top here is it says pull requests 1, issues 1. If I click on issues, it should actually tell me now. I keep on clicking with the wrong mouse button. I've now got 0 issues open and 1 of them is closed. If I refresh the page, should refresh the numbers. Okay, so my issues are 0 and my pull requests are 0. If I want to, I can see the closed one. So this issue was automatically closed when I accepted that pull request. And if I click on pull requests, it will have one that was closed, and it will say here, this is the one, this was closed because I pressed the close button. Notice that the pull request got its own label, number 2. So the pull requests and issues, they share a namespace for their identifiers. So I can refer to pull requests or issues by just using hash and then the number. Okay, I think I mentioned that before, but anyway, good to reiterate. All right, so we've done the pull request. We've done all of these things that I mentioned here, and we've merged the pull request. Okay, we deleted it and we went to issues. Good. Okay, so that's the life cycle of how we use the GitHub issues. And you can imagine what would happen is that you have multiple different people working on multiple different things at the same time. Maybe one person is doing a lot of the literature review. They're updating one of the .txt files. And maybe they're creating the bibliography and all of that sort of stuff. Maybe you've got somebody else who's doing some observing and they're taking copious observing notes. They're doing that maybe either in another branch or at least in another file. And you've maybe got somebody else who's writing the code that's doing some of the analysis. Now, maybe they're all happening simultaneously, maybe they're not, but nonetheless, you may have multiple different tickets open in the issues here to track the progress of each of those. So that gets us onto how we can use GitHub as a project management tool. So we've already explored using the GitHub issues. And I want to take this to one tier higher and talk about the GitHub milestones. So let's go back to the bird count repository and go to the issues tab. Okay, I'm already there. On milestones, click and select new milestone. So here, this little button here, milestones, and then I don't have any milestones, so I'm going to create. All right, now what did I say? So let's create a milestone of project initiation. Initial setup tasks. To get the project started. What's the due date? Let's make this due the end of the week. We don't have to put one, but anyway, and then we'll create a milestone. So the milestone is just I guess it's a placeholder. And then to that, we can add issues to the milestone. So at the moment, it's zero out of 0 issues done. So it says 0% complete. Let's have a look at the issues. Excuse me. Look at the closed issue. And we'll say this actually should be part of that milestone that we've just created. So I'm going to link these two together now. So this milestone now has this project setup as the one and only issue at the moment. And then, in fact, if I click on this, it takes me back to that page. And it says that there's one issue. So the milestones are sort of a way of gathering the issues together. It now says that it's 100% complete because I've done 1 of 1 issues. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a few other issues. So let's go back to the issues page and add a bunch more issues. So go issues, new issue, define project structure. And I can assign myself and I can add to the milestone. I could put some text in here, but for now I don't want to. In reality, I would do more things. So, all right, define project structure. What else does it say? Assign this to the milestone. Good. Repeat. Okay, identify contributors. Yep. All right. So do another new issue. Determine potential collaborators. Add this to the same project. Sorry, not project, milestone. And assign myself, I guess. And then draft project timeline. That's a good one. Set some expectations. So draft project timeline. Assign myself. Add to the milestone. And last one, determines data storage formats. Okay. Data storage formats. But CSV would be nice. But we should discuss. All right. Assign myself. Milestone. All right. So really all I wanted to do here is make it so that we have a whole bunch of issues. So I've got some issues here. If I wanted to, I could, how do I do these labels? I could add labels to these, but really what I've done, you can see here, they've each got a milestone associated with them. So if I click on my milestones and then I click on project initiation, it says that it's 20% complete, 4 open and 1 closed. So then project initiation, I can look here. And again, it's just grouped together the issues that are related to this particular milestone. So I can have multiple milestones open at once. I might have a different person responsible for overseeing that milestone completion. Or maybe I'm going to take that on as the sort of project manager, maybe the lead of the project. But I could also assign different people to different issues within there. Okay, I think that's what I want to do. Project initiation. Yes, it's done. Okay, so this is sort of our project management. As I click this and I can say, I'm going to mark this one as not planned. I didn't know what that is, but anyway, let's say that one's completed. All right. So that's now listed as, that should be listed as a closed. Just refresh this. Yep, that should be listed as closed. And now my project moves along to being 40% complete. Okay, you can put timelines for each of the individual ones. And like I said, you can break this down into whatever granular level you would like it to be. So I find this as a nice project management tool because it sits with your project itself. You don't have to then look at, oh, I've got a Excel spreadsheet, or I've got a Trello account which is tracking the progress here. Everyone who's a collaborator who gets access to this repository can also see the issues. They can also see the milestones, so they can see how the project is coming along. You can do everything all in the one place. Okay. Questions so far? Does anybody use project management software that's sort of built for purpose? So do you use something like Jira or Trello or I can't remember what else. They're the two that I usually use. Yeah, Notion. Notion's a good one. Okay. If you don't, then maybe this is a good way, a good place to start, seeing as how it's not overly complicated, and it's already living with some of your GitHub repositories. So this is good for, like I said, tracking a single project. I personally use Notion as a way of tracking all my notes, but then I've got a to-do list in there that spans across all of my different work activities that are more than just a single project here. So anyway, have a go with this, see how it works for you. Yeah. All right. So that's the sort of project management side of GitHub, which I think can be very useful for managing projects and managing people. The next thing I want to talk about is how you can promote yourself and how you can promote your project. So we all know that self-promotion is something that's important in research, because if you're not promoting yourself, then nobody's promoting you. And ultimately, people need to be able to know and see and appreciate the work you do for them to give you further opportunities to do that work. So GitHub has two nice tools for promoting ourselves and our work. There's a personal profile and a project website. So let's first look at a profile. So this is the profile in some of the GitHub documentation. And you may have seen my own one earlier. If I click on myself, click on my profile. So the left-hand side is just, if I edit profile, it allows me to add a bio and pronouns and where I work and blah, 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 social links, all that kind of stuff. Cancel that. But this page here, all of the stuff that you can see in here, this is something that I've written for myself as a way of kind of explaining to people who I am and what I do. Now, if people are coming to us and they're applying for jobs and we're interviewing them, So at the Curtin Institute for Data Science, we hire a lot of data scientists and software developers. And one of the ways that they demonstrate their capability is by linking us to projects that they've contributed to on GitHub. Now, it's not always possible because some of the projects are private and I'm not allowed to see them. But the one thing that I can see with everybody is their profile here. So this stuff down the bottom is the repositories you have and the contributions that you've made and the type of activity that you do, like how you contribute to those repositories. But this bit up here is the bit that you can edit for yourself. So that's what we're going to do now. So if you go to github.com, log into your account, and if you haven't done it already, create a new repository that has the same exact name as your GitHub username. So for me, that would be this repository here. So this is my username. This is the repository name here. And then within that repository, I create a readme.md file, which renders however I want it to. So it even tells you in the right-hand side here that this is a special repository. So I could edit this if I press the little pencil button. If you don't have a README, there'll be a little button over here to say create a new README. So let me see. Edit, yeah, initialize the repository with a README file, edit the README to include a bio, research interests, links to your website, etc., etc. So I used a bunch of Markdown and some of the little emojis that GitHub understands. You can also just directly paste in HTML and that will get rendered as well. So here where I've said connect with me and there's a LinkedIn badge, that's just me copying this thing here, which I think I just went to LinkedIn and it gave me that. That was a bit boring. And then all of this guff here is me linking what are some of the tools that I use in my work. And these ones here, you can just find the icons and create these for yourself. This little kind of badge here, this sort of automatically calculated what languages I use for my repositories. That was actually, where are we? Here it is. That's another piece of HTML code that somebody has created. And so what you can do, in fact, let me just copy this into the chat in case anybody wants this. The only thing you have to change here is the username to be your username and maybe the alt text as well. And it will give you one of these nifty little things. Now, there's a lot of different, like I didn't come up with this all by myself. There's a lot of existing profiles out there. And for any of those profiles, you can just show the raw text for that. And you can copy and reuse whatever parts of that you might like. So I suggest that we, I want that to be open in a new page. So I've suggested that in the collaborative notes, get rid of that. Why is this jumbo mode? Let's just go back to, it's a bit better. All right, so I'll put my profile in there. If you have a profile, you can post yours in there. Now this has gone all weird. Yep. Where did I link it? I thought I linked in here. Nope, mustn't have done it yet. Okay. GitHub profile, GitHub readmes. Where is it? Awesome GitHub profile readme. This is the one. So there's lots of awesome lists on GitHub. This person has made a bunch of lists for the different types of profiles that people have. So let's say somebody has code mode. So I click on a couple of these people and we'll see this is their profile. So you can see who they are, software engineer at the university. Here's they're being fun here, showing, demonstrating themselves as some kind of structure, some kind of data structure. We then have somebody who's got lots of badges. So you can get these little code badges. And again, if you want to say, oh, I like this one here, it says code Python. How do I do that? No. What did I press? Oh, I pressed edit. Sorry, I meant to click the .md file. Then you can just look at code and you can say, oh, that's all they've done. It's just this link here. This is how they've added that badge. Okay, so you can go around the place and you can find people who have got interesting profiles. You can take the bits that you like and you can remix it and you can make it your own. And ultimately, I think you want to create something that is about who you are as a researcher, the types of activities that you want to engage in. So if you're open to collaboration on different science topics or different types of projects, and maybe you can list how you like to contribute, whether you want to, you like the observing, the theorizing, the doing the simulations, whether you like writing code or proposals or whatever you see as your strengths. This might be something good to mention on your GitHub profile page. Now that's going to take a while for you to do, so I'm not going to make you do that immediately. But the instructions are here nonetheless, so that you can do those things. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at Kobe's one. Hello, yeah, great, cool. So you're on your way. These repositories here, the ones that say popular, there is a way that you can pin repositories, and I got to try and remind myself how to do it. But you can actually control which ones of these come up. Oh, here we go, customize your pins. So I have a lot of repositories, and a lot of them are just ones that I've used in teaching that are kind of throwaway, a bit garbage. And they tended to populate this common repositories because they had a lot of commits on them recently. But I wanted to pin these four as four repositories that are relevant to my research experience. So you can click the little customize pins and you can choose, I think maybe it's four, but maybe you can select more. So you can choose which of the repositories you want to keep here. And there's a few other things that you can do as well. So yeah, cool. All right, good. Any questions about your self-promotion using the README file? Oops, it's not that one. I want this one. All right. Cool. Well, like I said, I'll leave you time to do this because obviously you can't do an amazing job in a few minutes. So something that's going to take care. The other thing that we can do is we can create a project landing page. So this is something that's more about how to promote your project, like on a project by project basis, rather than sort of you generically. So let's have a look at, let's go back to our bird count repository. And what I want to do is I want to create a web page for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my repository and then go to the settings page. So here where it says settings, I'm going to click that. And then on the left-hand side here, it says, what does it say? Let me read my own instructions again. Pages on the left panel. Here it is, pages. All right, so we click on pages and then it says deploy from branch. Sure. Which branch are we going to use? I want to use the main branch and I want to use the docs folder. So what's going to happen now is GitHub, when I save this, GitHub is going to look into my main repository and into the folder called docs. And it's going to look in there for some content. And it's going to use that content to render a website. So let's put some content in there to start with. So we don't have a docs container, a docs folder at the moment. So let's add one. And because Git doesn't track directories, only files, we essentially say docs slash, and then let's make something called index.html. I'll just make a static page. And let's just, pre-made a whole bunch of HTML. HTML's not super fun to work with, so I actually got Copilot to do most of that work for me because it's boring. So I'm going to copy that HTML into my index.html. When I say preview, yeah, it just does code highlighting. That's not exactly what I wanted, but anyway. So if I copy that in and say commit the changes, there, correct in the main branch, good. All right, commit changes. So what happens now is I've now got in the /docs folder, I have an index.html. You'll see it says here, this is my the latest commit. Next to my latest commit, there's a little brown dot saying pending. And this is because GitHub has actually created an action for me, which is called pages build and deployment. Now, we're not really going to talk about GitHub actions, how to create them, that sort of thing in this workshop. But really what's happening here is that Git is looking in that directory, it's figuring out how to build that website, and it's building it for me. That will complete in a little while. Okay, there's a green tick here which says that it's successful. So I've made my website front page for this project. Where is it? The easiest way to figure out where it is we click on the little about cog here, and then it says website, and then just click use your GitHub pages website. So I'll save changes here. And now it says paulhancock.github.io/bird count. That is the page. So github.com is where we keep all of our code and things like that. github.io is where you see a lot of project pages. So if I open this up, I get this website. So now you can create, if you want to go a little bit more sort of involved than just creating a wiki, you can create a website like this, which people don't even really have to know that you've hosted it on your GitHub. I mean, apart from the URL, but apart from that, you can make yourself a great web page that's going to advertise your site. You can make this interactive as well. You can use a lot of fancy JavaScript stuff in here to make it interactive on the front end. You can, apart from just including a single static file in here, you can do a whole heap of things with templates and things like that to render a website. And in fact, if you look at our workshop page, you'll notice that this is a github.io website. So in fact, everything that you see here is part of, let's see, if I click this one. So this is the GitHub repo that is used to create the workshop website. And there are actions in here that will render all of these different files into a website. So this one is much more complicated. Thankfully, I didn't have to create it because I used I forked this from my template from the GitHub, from the Software Carpentries organization. So the Carpentries folks created all of these configuration files and everything like that to make this work for me. All I have to do is edit the content part of it. But again, this is a GitHub website, a GitHub repository here, which has an associated website that gets rendered. Every time I push to the main branch, this whole website will get rebuilt and re-rendered. Yeah, so you can, like I said, you can start off simple like this, and you can create something that's much more fancy and involved if you like. All right, let's see where we're up to. Creating a project landing page. We did all of that. Cool. Okay. So that's all I wanted to cover for today. There's a couple of extra topics here that I thought people might want to talk about. We can talk about them now if you have particular questions about these, or we can talk about these on Thursday once you've had a bit of time to maybe play around and try doing something with GitHub Actions or try doing things with Zenodo, and then maybe we can have like a troubleshooting session on Thursday for that. So I'll leave that up to you as to your choice as to which one you want to do. But regardless of what we do in relation to that, the thing that I keep forgetting to do is ask people to fill out the survey. I know you don't like surveys, but if you could just fill this out, even if you've already filled it out for one of the other workshops, it very much helps me to improve and to continue to deliver relevant workshops into the community. So, all right, we've got some time left for filling in surveys, but also time left for questions about anything that we've covered, or maybe even some of these advanced topics.